My name is Avery Lane. I'm 32 years old, and on the night I blew out no candles, my family was toasting my brother's promotion. Their laughter spilled from a Facebook Live while I sat in my silent apartment, heels still on, champagne still corked. The only light came from the cake I bought myself, one candle unlit. I told myself it didn't matter, but the lie tasted like wax. They'd forgotten my birthday again. What they didn't know was that would be their last time forgetting me. Before I continue, tell me where you're watching from. And hit like and subscribe if you've ever been betrayed by your own family. Because what happened next wasn't just another forgotten birthday, it was the moment I finally stopped begging to be seen and started writing my own story. You'll understand soon enough. I grew up in a house where love had conditions printed in fine ink, the kind you only noticed when it was too late. Our home on Lake Shore Drive was all glass and silence. My father, Thomas Lane, believed in appearances. He used to say perception builds legacy. My mother, Meredith, handled the emotional PR of our family, forever crafting a story where my brother Carter was the headline and I was the footnote. When I was 11, I waited 3 hours at a family restaurant with a single slice of cake. The frosting slid sideways as the candle melted into the sponge. They'd promised they'd be there right after Carter's debate competition. The waiter refilled my water glass 3 times, pity thick in his eyes. When the front door finally swung open, my parents were beaming. Carter had won. My mother swept and kissed my forehead and said, "You understand, right? This was a big night for your brother." I nodded, and I did understand. That understanding hollowed something inside me. At 17, I was shipped to my grandmother's for the weekend of my birthday because Carter needs us for college tours. I sat on her floral couch flipping through photos of him standing next to ivy-covered gates, while my mother texted me a quick, "Happy birthday, sweetheart," with a heart emoji that looked mass-produced. I told Grandma I was fine. She saw through it but didn't push. "Sometimes the ones we love most just don't see us," she murmured, and I thought she was being poetic. I didn't realize she was warning me. College was my chance to reinvent myself, to be the one people noticed. I worked 2 jobs, lived on caffeine, and graduated summa cum laude. I remember stepping onto the stage, scanning the crowd for my family. I spotted them in the second row, only to see Carter kneel beside his girlfriend right as I got my diploma. The auditorium gasped, cameras flashed, and in the chaos, no one clapped for me. Later, my mom posted the engagement photos with the caption, "Proud of both my kids, what a day for our family." She didn't notice that I wasn't smiling in a single shot. After that, I stopped expecting applause. Work became my armor. In my 20s, I built a name in PR, crisis management, smoothing over other people's disasters while quietly carrying my own. My parents loved telling people Avery works in communications, as if I ran errands for Carter's firm. I didn't correct them. Why waste energy explaining to people who weren't listening? Every holiday was a rerun. Thanksgiving, Carter's new promotion. Christmas, Carter's latest investment. I was the one setting the table, managing logistics, making everything seamless so they could shine. Mom used to say, "You're so dependable, Avery. You always make things easier." She meant invisible. I didn't know it back then, but each small silence was carving out the woman I'd have to become. Every forgotten candle, every missed celebration was shaping the voice I'd one day used to say no. But at the time, I just learned to swallow it, to keep my posture straight and my smile polite, to exist in the spaces between their pride, because being unseen was easier than being a disappointment. Yet I didn't realize invisibility comes with a cost. You start disappearing from yourself too. My 20s came with shiny resumes and quiet loneliness. I climbed the corporate ladder, one campaign at a time, 40-hour weeks that bled into weekends, adrenaline and iced coffee in my veins. The office lights became my sunsets. Success looked glamorous from the outside, but I knew better. It was a fortress I'd built to survive, neglect disguised as love. When I landed my first $1 million client, I called, my parents' voice trembling with excitement. Dad answered on speaker. "That's great, honey," he said, distracted. "Listen, your brother's launching his fund next quarter. He might need your contacts at Axiom Gen. Can you introduce him to their CMO?" There it was again, the ask hidden behind the congratulations. A reflex that always turned my milestones into stepping stones for Carter. I said, "Sure, I'll see what I can do." The words came out on autopilot. Old habits die hard, especially the ones that once kept you loved. Carter wasn't cruel. He just floated on the current our parents built for him. Handsome, charismatic, confident, the kind of man people trusted without asking why. At family dinners, he'd laugh clinking his glass while Mom bragged about him like he'd personally built the stock market. When the conversation turned to me, it was softer filler between bites. "Avery's doing well too," she'd say, and move on. I learned to measure my worth in quarterly reports and analytics dashboards. Numbers didn't lie. Numbers saw me. My therapist, Dr. Shah, once told me that daughters of emotional neglect often overperform. They mistake achievement for affection. I smiled and told her, then I must be the most loved person alive. She didn't laugh. There was one person who truly saw me. Ruth Kaplan, my neighbor 2 floors down. 84 years old, sharp, as glass, retired journalist. The first time we met, she was yelling at her oven for burning oatmeal cookies. I offered to help, and she handed me a plate instead. Sit. Tell me what's wrong. I didn't even know I looked upset. Every Tuesday after that, I'd bring takeout, and she'd bake something sweet. She had a way of slicing through my guardedness like it was pastry crust. You remind me of myself at your age, she said once. Too composed, too efficient. I used to mistake being calm for being in control. It's not the same thing. She told me about stories she'd written, corrupt CEOs she'd exposed. When I asked how she handled the backlash, she smiled. By telling the truth before they could weaponize it. I didn't know that line would echo back years later when my own truth became a weapon. Sometimes I'd leave Ruth's apartment and find voicemails from Mom, emotional monologues about family dinners I'd missed. You know your father worries, Avery. You work too much. Carter asked about you. Translation: you're drifting too far from the script. It was always about the family's narrative, never mine. I had a role to play, reliable, calm, available. But one winter evening, as I stared at the Chicago skyline from my window, something in me cracked. I imagined what my life might look like if I stopped orbiting around their approval. A dangerous thought for Elaine. The memory that solidified everything came a week later, Christmas dinner. Carter arrived late, holding designer gifts for everyone. Mom squealed like he'd brought gold. When I handed her a framed photo of the four of us from years ago, she frowned slightly. Oh, that's nice. But we already have this one in the hallway. Except they didn't. I'd noticed the hallway wall the week before. It was filled with Carter's milestones, his graduation, wedding, business trips, but not a single picture of me. That night, after the guests left, I stood in the hallway alone, fingers tracing the empty space between frames. My reflection stared back from the glass, present but unseen. I whispered, maybe it's time I build my own wall. I didn't know then that the next birthday, the one they'd forget again, would be the breaking point. The night I'd stop waiting for their love and start designing my revenge. It started with a notification, one small ping that cracked the thin shell I'd been living in. The group chat popped up by accident. My mother must have added me by mistake. She'd meant to invite Carter's anniversary planning. At first, I thought it was just another event thread. Then I saw the messages. Dad, she just got her bonus. $20,000 from Avery would cover catering. Mom, yes. It's time she supports the family for once. Carter, keep it between us. She'll say yes if it sounds like helping, not donating. My stomach went cold. I reread it twice, then again. They weren't talking to me. They were trading pieces of me. Money, contacts, obligations disguised as affection. I sat frozen, the screen's blue light bleeding into my reflection. It wasn't the dollar amount that hurt, it was the tone. Like I was a resource, not a daughter. When I finally told Naomi, my best friend and coworker, she almost dropped her coffee. Wait, she said. Your brother's using your bonus for his party, and didn't he already use your Axiom Gen contact once? Apparently that's a family tradition now. She leaned back, arms crossed. You realize that's fraud if he's still sending emails under your signature, right? That's when it hit me. He had access to my old digital sign-off from an internal campaign last year. It was harmless then, but if he used it now, I pulled up my email logs. The timestamp blinked back at me. Meeting scheduled between Carter Lane and Dr. Jensen, CMO of Axiom Gen. The confirmation had gone out under my archived signature. He hadn't just borrowed my name. He'd worn it. I wanted to confront him right away, but my phone rang before I could even close the laptop. Sweetheart, Mom's voice bubbled through the receiver, too cheerful. Quick question. Can you help with Carter's anniversary dinner? You're so good with decorations. Mom, I said evenly. Did you know you added me to your group chat? A pause. What group chat? She asked too fast. The one where Dad suggests I pay for catering. Her laugh was thin. Oh, honey, you know how your father exaggerates. We're all one family. Apparently not the kind that asks permission first. I hung up before she could turn the guilt switch back on. The next day at work, I was knee-deep in a recall crisis for our biggest client, North Pier. My desk looked like a war zone of press releases and phone logs. Then the glass door of our conference room slid open, and he walked in, Thomas Lane, my father, wearing a suit that screamed authority and desperation. Dad. My voice barely made it past my throat. We need to talk, he said, ignoring the curious glances outside the glass walls. I guided him into a private room aware that everyone could still see the confrontation play out in silence through the transparent walls. He adjusted his cufflinks, the gesture I'd seen before every lecture. "Your mother's upset," he began. "You're making things difficult. I'm at work. I raised you to understand family obligations. Carter's done more for our name than anyone. Supporting him is good optics," I snapped. "Is that what this is about, optics?" His jaw tightened. "Watch your tone." I crossed my arms. "You came into my office, Dad. That's my tone." The glass door opened a crack, Naomi pretending to bring in folders but really just checking I was okay. I nodded once. She closed it again. My father's voice dropped. "You're being selfish. I'm disappointed. Something in me broke. I've been disappointing you my whole life, Dad. At least now I'm getting good at it." For the first time, he had no comeback. Just silence, heavy and sharp. He turned to leave, but before the door closed, he said quietly, "Don't forget who built the Lane name." I stared at the reflection of my own face in the glass wall. "I won't," I whispered. That's exactly the problem. I didn't know it yet, but that confrontation was only the beginning. After that day, silence became its own kind of weapon. My parents didn't call, at least, not directly. Instead, their disappointment leaked out through the family grapevine. My cousin Paige texted, "Your mom posted something weird." I opened Facebook, and there it was, a photo of my family dinner table. 3 chairs occupied Mom, Dad, Carter, and one empty seat neatly set with silverware and a folded napkin. The caption read, "Miss you, sweetheart. Wish you'd remember where home is." The comments burned. "Such a shame kids these days forget family values. Maybe she'll come around eventually." I recognized the chair immediately. The placement card still had my name on it, Avery, written in my mother's handwriting. Except something was off. The light, the shadows, the angle. I zoomed in. The reflection of a tripod glinted in the wine glass. It wasn't a candid photo. It was staged. That night, Paige called. "You didn't hear it from me," she whispered, "but Mom asked Brooke to help set that photo up. Said it'd make you feel guilty." I laughed, but it came out broken. "Guess the PR runs in the family." Naomi was livid when I told her. "That's manipulation, Avery. Full-blown emotional blackmail." I shrugged, though my hands were trembling. "I've survived worse." "Yeah," she said, "but surviving isn't living." She was right. I was done surviving. 3 nights later, I stood at my apartment window, the city humming beneath me. I poured a glass of wine and opened the photo again, the one that tried to guilt me into coming home. Instead, it made me feel something else: clarity. I'd spent years fixing other people's reputations. Maybe it was time to build my own freedom campaign. The next morning, I drove to the Michigan lake shore. The air was sharp with pine and salt, the kind of clean that makes you feel both exposed and new. The realtor, a woman named Claire, led me through a 4-bedroom house perched on a slope overlooking the water. Sunlight spilled across the wooden floors. The air smelled like cedar and possibility. "This just listed," Claire said. "Owners already relocated to Arizona. They're eager to close." I walked to the deck, the lake, stretching endless and blue. My heart thudded against my ribs. How much, she told me. I did the math, my bonus, my savings, it fit. Barely, but it fit. Claire hesitated. "You want to think about it, maybe talk to family," I smiled. "No family consultation necessary." I signed the offer right there with my Mont Blanc pin, the same pin my father had given me for college graduation. "To sign something important one day," he'd said. I wondered if this counted. Back in Chicago, my phone lit up with missed calls: Mom, Dad, Carter. I ignored them. For 10 days, I went silent. No contact. I worked, packed, and dreamed about paint colors and furniture placement. The first thing I bought for the lake house was a long wooden dining table with just one chair. Mine. A week later, I hosted my first gathering there. Not a party exactly, more like a declaration. Naomi brought wine, Victor from work dropped off flowers, and Ruth baked oatmeal cookies. "You did it," she said, squeezing my hand. "You built your own story." I told her about the staged photo, the group chat, the visit to my office. She listened quietly, then said something that would later echo through my revenge plan. "Power isn't yelling louder," Ruth said. "It's collecting receipts while they perform." She tapped the side of her head. "Keep the evidence, dear. Truth has a funny way of coming back when people least expect it." That night, under the warm hum of string lights, I took a photo on the deck, barefoot, wine in hand, the lake behind me. The caption was simple: "Weekend at my new lake house. Birthday gift to myself." By morning, it had over 100 comments, most from colleagues cheering me on. But one notification froze me. Mom had seen it. And within hours, she was calling again. This time I didn't pick up. The invitation arrived in a tone, not an envelope. My mother's voicemail was clipped, rehearsed, trembling just enough to sound fragile. Family dinner. Tuesday at 7. Your father insists you attend. It's time to clear the air. I almost laughed. In PR, clear the air usually means control the narrative. Still I went. Not out of obligation, but strategy. The Lane mansion loomed against the dusk, 3 stories of polished stone and repression. I parked at the curb clutching the 3 albums and a slim black briefcase, the one that held everything they'd rather not see. When Meredith opened the door, her perfume hit first powder and performance. Avery, she breathed, pressing her hand to her chest like I was a prodigal ghost. You came. Wouldn't miss it, I said. The dining room was set like a magazine spread, china candles, floral centerpieces too tall for eye contact. Dad sat at the head of the table, Carter beside him, glass of bourbon half raised. Brooke smiled like she was hosting. I took my seat, the album stacked in front of me. Mom tried small talk, traffic, weather, someone's baby shower. I let the silences eat her words. Finally, Dad cleared his throat. Let's get to it. We're concerned about your impulsive decisions. Buying property without consulting the family reflects poorly on our image. I stared at him. Our image? Or your creditors? The room shifted. Carter looked up, startled. Dad's jaw flexed. Excuse me, you heard me. You're covering investment losses. The $20,000 wasn't for a party, it was a test run, wasn't it? See how much you could extract. He slammed his glass down, bourbon sloshing over the rim. Careful, Avery. I opened my briefcase, pulling out a folder. No, you be careful. Inside were the printed screenshots, group chat messages, email logs showing Carter's unauthorized use of my signature, and Paige's photo of Mom's staged dinner post, the tripod reflection circled in red. Carter went pale. Avery, save it, I said. You knew about this. He swallowed hard, voice cracking. I didn't think that's your problem. You never do. You let them decide who you are, and you let them use me to prop you up. Mom's voice trembled. We just wanted you to feel included. Included, I snapped. You built an entire narrative where I was the problem child, the cold career girl. You forgot my birthday while toasting his promotion. Her tears came on cue. Sweetheart, we didn't mean to hurt you. Intent doesn't erase impact. My voice was calm, deadly even. You taught me how to manage optics. Consider this a crisis debrief. I opened the first album, Carter's Birthdays, lined with glittering smiles. Exhibit A, The Chosen Heir. Then the second, my own, nearly empty. One picture, 11 years old, a candle half melted. Exhibit B, The Invisible Daughter. Finally, the third, family trips I'd never been part of. Exhibit C, The Myth of Unity. The air thickened, fragile as glass. Dad tried to speak, but Ruth's voice echoed in my mind. Tell the truth before they weaponize it. I laid the final paper on the table, Carter's fraudulent email request to Axiom Gen, complete with digital trail. If this ever surfaces, I said, it doesn't touch me, but it ends him, and your precious legacy with it. Silence. Just the slow tick of the grandfather clock behind us. I don't want revenge, I said, standing. I want boundaries. You can live your story. I'm done playing a background character in it. Mom's tears fell for real this time. Carter looked like he might apologize, but I didn't stay to hear it. I left the albums on the table. Evidence. Memory. Proof. As I reached the front door, Dad's voice cracked behind me. If you walk out now, Avery, I turned hand on the handle. Then I finally become the woman you raised, just not the one you wanted. The door clicked shut behind me. The sound was quiet. Final. Like justice delivered in lowercase. I drove straight to the lake house that night, headlights slicing through the dark highway. The silence was thick enough to breathe in, cleaner than any apology could ever be. I didn't cry. I didn't even shake. Just kept one hand on the wheel, one on the briefcase beside me, my box of truth. When I reached the house, the lake shimmered black and endless. The moon hung low, silver, bleeding onto the water. I stepped onto the deck, barefoot, wind cutting through the quiet. Somewhere behind me, my phone vibrated over and over. Mom, Dad, Carter. I let it ring until it stopped. I set the albums on the table and opened the second one, the one with all the blank pages. The emptiness no longer hurt. It looked like space. Possibility. I uncapped my Mont Blanc pen and wrote across the first page in steady ink. This story begins here. Then I took out the printed receipts, the emails, the screenshots. I slid them into a clean folder labeled Legacy, Final Draft. It wasn't blackmail. It was leverage, protection, and maybe one day a mirror. I wasn't planning to destroy them. Not yet. But I wanted them to know I could. Because that's the real revenge, not shouting, not chaos, but peace they can't reach and power they handed you themselves. Inside, the fire hissed softly in the stone hearth. I poured a glass of wine and watched the reflection of flames in the window. Somewhere out there, my family was scrambling to rewrite the narrative. Let them. I'd already published mine. The lake whispered against the shore, as if agreeing, and I smiled small and certain. They thought they'd buried me in silence. They just taught me how to speak louder without a sound. If you've ever been the quiet one, the fixer, the forgotten, the background character in your own story, hit like and subscribe. Because stories like mine don't end with a slammed door. They start there. I'm not done, and neither are you. Sometimes choosing yourself looks like revenge, but it's really freedom wearing a sharper edge. Tell me in the comments, what would you have done? And remember, if you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family, subscribe. This story isn't over.